Hello dear learners, first of all I'd like to welcome you all to this module on English for news writing. In an earlier module we had actually discussed about how we can write English for media, more specifically in the field of print, radio and television. In this present module we will try to understand some of the important aspects of the specific and purposive use of the English language for news writing. That English is a language that is widely used as a common medium of communication in different fields. And the same is also applicable in the field of journalism as well. This particular module aims at equipping you with the required knowledge and skill of using English as a medium of communication for diverse professional purposes. Now, coming to the main objectives of this module, we have three important objectives. The first important objective is to gain important insights into the use of the English language for news writing. The second important objective is to understand the language and style for print, electronic media, which also includes radio and television. The third important objective is to develop your skills for news writing in English. Now, let us try to understand how the language and style of Indian media has evolved over a period of time. Definitely there is no doubt that English has become the dominant means of international communication. The last few decades, and as a globalization trend gathered pace, the influence of English has grown by leaps and bounds. We are persuaded, we are informed, and also we are entertained during every conscious minute of our lives. Indian English has gained a distinct status of its own, if you look at in the recent times. And this has been done through a long process of coining and incorporating new words, structures, and expressions. And it is our colonial past that has actually given us the English language a distinct flavor of its own, as a cultural asset. And officially English language that is followed in India, in our country, is a Queen's English. But however, it is seen that the language of the English language in Indian newspapers is a mixture of the Queen's English, the American English, and the Indian English. Dear learners, if you actually really go through all the different newspapers, more specifically in English language, you will probably notice or you will come across certain misuse of words without understanding their proper technical use, and misspelling of common words is a familiar sight. And in their use of English, the journalists often tend to forget that some words might mean one thing in Britain and another in America. So there is some kind of differences between the use of American English with those of the British English. And this definitely creates immense confusion for the readers at times. Another visible trend which is very noticeable is a tendency of the media to use very difficult words and complicated sentences just to prove their command over the language, which this shouldn't be done actually. Language should be very simple to use, should be very understandable. One should not go over the board to use flowery languages, some technical jargons. Yes, in certain cases we do need to use them, but for the benefit of all the readers or the listeners as well, one needs to use only very simple languages, simple words, which can be easily comprehended by the general masses. Because one needs to remember that the basic purpose of news is just not to show literary genius. No one is interested to know which newspaper, which media organization makes use of best words just to impress the readers, but actually to give information to the readers. Okay, and most Indian newspapers, they're actually seen to be lacking in lucidity, in brevity, and in the use of very simple words as well as precision. So dear learners, at this particular point, let me try to emphasize the importance of style book. Now, what exactly is style book? We often keep on hearing that different media organizations have their own specific style book. The style book is an absolute necessity for for any media organization. It can be print media organization or electronic media organization. Because only a good style book can actually help to improve the presentation of news. Suppose for instance, the Times of India. Their writing style, their way of presenting news is very different to other newspapers like the Hindustan Times, or for that instance, or for that example, the Statesman. Because style book actually helps to maintain a uniform standard of style and usage for the media organization. Now, we all know that during the colonial period, we had different newspapers, okay, which of course the main motive was to sensitize the people against the erstwhile East India Company or against British rule in India. Like the India Gazette, we had the Bengal Horkaro, the Chronicle, the Bengal Times. These were a few of the prominent English language newspapers that were actually published during the pre-independence period in India. For instance, in Hickey's Bengal Gazette, which was said to be the first Indian newspaper in pre-independence period, the front page news stories, they were actually written in British English. Okay. Elsewhere in other pages of this particular newspaper, Anglo-Indian expressions were widely used. Even if you look at Gandhiji's Young India, okay, in that particular piece, you will see that it actually served the purpose of using the English language as a common Indian and made the people aware about the purpose and need of the hour. And his language, Gandhiji's language, was actually charged with a spiritual idealism. So we can see that over different periods of time, and different newspapers, different periodicals, they had their own different style and language of news presentation. And when we talk about the Anglo-Indian press, which actually prospered in India at that point of time, it spoke to different newspapers like the Englishman, the Statesman, the Times of India, the Madras Times, the Madras Mail, and so on and so forth. And during India's struggle for independence, when India was, wholeheartedly, the people rose against the atrocities of the erstwhile East India Company, or for that matter against the British rule, the language press also played a very important role. Okay, when we talk about language press, we're talking about the different newspapers, the periodicals and journals which were published from different parts of the country in their own different respective languages. Okay, and if we look at the present times, in the current scenario, this English language has actually gone through certain changes because of certain factors. A few of the important factors are, the first important factor we can cite is because of global approach. Okay, globalization, liberalization, that's actually opened up, the different markets, and as a result of which the different media organizations across the world have invested, in different other local media organizations. There is a globalized way of expansion of news stories. Okay. The second important factor which we can cite is corporatization, consumerization of societies, and of course free access to one another. The third important factor we can say is a growing distaste for rigidity of the language. Now, we have been talking so far about the print media. What about broadcast media? Okay, which includes more specifically radio and television. Now, the language and style of writing for broadcast media has also evolved, just like print media. Now, of course, most of the concepts of reporting are exactly the same, but the writing style, it differs. Over the period of time, it has evolved, or different writing styles can be seen as far as broadcast media is concerned. Of course, in broadcast media, more than the words that are being spoken when the particular news is being broadcast, the visuals matters the most. The impact of sound is very important. So it's a combination of visuals, sound and other written words. Still, one cannot exactly deny the importance of audiovisual medium or the use of the words. The art of writing for broadcast media is very hard if you compare with print media, because for print media it's very easy. A particular reporter will go to a field, they'll try to collect the particular news story. Okay, they'll edit the news stories, maybe they'll try to insert a few pictures, they'll try to take the opinion of a few people who might have witnessed a particular incident, and then that will be, published. But this is not so in case of broadcast media. Not only the concerned reporter or the newsreader who is reading out the particular news story, not only he or she have to be very clear or have to have a very good command over the particular news story that is being read out, but the other visuals or the sound that are being inserted into that particular news clip needs to be very much prominent. So one must exert caution while writing for electronic media. Okay, because when we talk about electronic media, or for that matter broadcast media, the people who are listening to it, the words that are being uttered on the particular big screen, that needs to be very carefully written out. Slight mistake in the use of the different words might create confusion in the minds of the listeners or the general audience. When we talk about radio or television, the exact golden rule for writing for radio is write as if, or for that matter television is, you need to write as if you're just talking to a friend. Okay, it's just like a conversational style. That is how one should go ahead when one needs to prepare a proper script or proper radio or television copy. Dear learners, let us try to understand how the language and style for print media is being laid out. And as we all know, print media is one of the oldest media of communication. Let us try to understand a few basic principles which have been outlined by Robert Gunning. And he has actually listed 10 important principles of clear writing. Or the first important principle which Robert Gunning has highlighted is making use of short sentences. As we all have talked about that, so far we have discussed that making use of short sentences, simple sentences, meaningful sentences, clear sentences. These are the basic rules or basic aspects or basic tenets of how you can actually go ahead and create an impactful position, or you can create an impact on the minds of the people. Second important thing is making use of simple sentences, which is very obvious. The writing part, when one writes for any radio copy or television copy, or for that matter in print copy also, one needs to make use of simple sentences. Of course, we need to use familiar words. Okay, as a layman, suppose I have to read a particular news story. Okay, that news report is about the sighting of a UFO in some part of the world, and if all the scientific terms are being used there, okay, then I will not be familiar with the actual news report. The real news report will not make any sense to me. So familiar words should be used, and of course we need to avoid unnecessary words. Okay, and only those words should be used which will actually add some kind of meaning to the sentence, maybe. Then putting action into verbs. We must, or the people who are working more specifically in the media field, they must give emphasis on active voice rather than on passive voice. Okay. Then of course we need to make you avoid formal stilted language. Now formal languages must be avoided in the lead actually. Now what is actually lead? And of course lastly, text it must be relatable to the audience. News reports should be written in such a way so that the audience can actually relate to it. Okay. And finally, expression is the key. Expression should be done in such a way that the concerned reader or the listener who is reading that particular news story, who is watching that particular news story, will be able to comprehend or will be able to understand what the media organization is trying to convey or what the news story is trying to bring forth, the important element as far as the story is concerned. Hard news stories, it tries to answer 5 W's and 1 H questions like who, what, when, where, why and how. When we try to find out the answer to these questions, then definitely that particular news story falls under the category of hard news. Then soft news stories, basically they're related to, they provide a certain human interest angle to a news story. They're related to events or incidents through which people actually feel connected and get involved. And human interest short stories or news stories occupy a major chunk of the soft news stories. Of course, when one goes about in writing a soft news story, one need not follow the news writing format of hard news, because hard news story we have a particular inverted pyramid style of writing news stories where the important stories are written on the topmost part of the news story, the lead part. In the body part, the less important, and the conclusion part, the least important stories are being put. That is a inverted pyramid style, which is usually followed in case of hard news stories. But for soft news stories, we need not follow such kind of format. And soft news stories give a wider perspective on the facts and they provide overall observations. Okay. Now, a news report. Basically, as I've already just discussed about that, more specifically in case of print media, it should consist of some important aspects, important parts. Of course, we need to have the headline, we need to have the byline, we need to have the lead, the body, and the conclusion. The headline is a main headline which actually speaks about what the news story is all about. Then when we talk about byline, it actually tells about the writer of the news story, who has actually written or who has narrated or who has tried to assemble different news stories and broadcast or published it. Then we have the lead, which actually covers the most important facts. We have the body, which includes a detailed account of the event or occurrence. Then finally we have the ending part or the conclusion, which talks about the solution or something to think about. Now, as we already talked about, the lead, which is the first paragraph. In the US, it's known as lead, while in newspapers in Britain we call it intro or the introduction. This is the most important part of any news story. And the lead or the intro, it must be written in such a way that it can arouse the curiosity of the general masses, the general reader. This is of course the hardest part. It's very hard to write because it needs to tell the reader that something new is happening, something interesting has taken place, and it should be covered within a particular single paragraph at the most, or maybe 2 paragraphs at the most, that should contain the important information. Okay, so that's why it's not very easy to write it down. You need to have all the important information with you, then only you can go ahead in writing the lead or the intro part. A few examples have been provided. I'm sure if you go to the different examples, will get a brief idea, or you will be able to understand how you can actually make the best use of the different languages that are being used to write the lead. Okay, and when we talk about inverted pyramid style, okay, we have been saying that hard news stories follow inverted pyramids. The inverted pyramid style is just like a pyramid where the most important information is given on the top, that is being followed by less information, and finding the least important information is being given in the last para of the news story. Okay, it tries to actually answer the 5 W's and 1 H. Okay, then the body. Now, of course, this is the main part of the news story when all the details have been given. Okay, and the most important details are being placed in the early part of the story, which is in the lead part, and maybe the less significant ones are being given in the body part. And even while writing the body of a news story, okay, there are a few aspects that you need to look into. You see, overall, the different principles that I'm talking about, or different steps that you need to look into while conceptualizing or while writing a news story, more specifically for print media, almost similar. You need to use very simple language, short sentences must be used. Try to make use of active voice as far as possible, okay, and try to avoid passive voice. And then, of course, you need to, while reproducing the speech directly, try to place it within double quotes, unlike in a headline where it is placed in single quotes. And of course, the time element is very important in news story. Okay, those news stories where the events have already taken place, okay, in a long time back, they're written in the past tense. Okay, if something is being recorded or something is been written about the present tense, then that tense should be followed. So you should be very careful while understanding the time element in news story. If something has taken place already a long time back, you can't make use of present tense. Okay, so that's why what I'm saying is that along with the language that's being used, you need to have a proper understanding of grammar, use of pronunciations, use of punctuations, use of quotations, use of articles, adjectives, adverbs. You need to have a thorough idea of it. Okay, and of course, apart from these basic principles, we need to have a certain idea about how the paragraph should be written. Okay, because each paragraph should be on a slightly different aspect of what happened. You can't repeat the same thing in each of the paragraphs. And information which is contained in the body should be written in the third person. Just keep that in mind. And of course, the background information that is relevant to the story, it must be explained properly. And also the evidence, the different facts and quotes from people that you have gathered or that are related to the event must be included while preparing the news report. Now, when we talk about broadcast media, okay, there is a very fine line of difference in comparison to print media. Print media, the focus is on the writing, on the words, because we don't have visuals, we don't have sound, which are an added bonus to have an impact on the news story. But in case of broadcast media, we do have a language and style for writing the radio copy, or for that matter, the television copy. You need to construct it properly. But along with that, you have the visuals. You have the element of sound in it, which acts or which tries to makes the entire news package and which makes the entire news story very appealing to the general audience. And unlike in print media, the audience in radio, they do not get to read what is written. They only hear what is being said. That's why, you should be very careful. One needs to be very careful or very cautious while writing for radio copy or for that matter, television copy. Now, the golden rule is of course to keep it very short and simple, which is of course applicable in case of print media as well. And you don't have to give too many statistics, too many data and all, or unnecessary addresses, unnecessary words. You need to don't create a confusion in the minds of the people by making use of very technical jargons, by making use of very flowery language just to impress the people. Always remember, expression is the key. As I've already said, you need to avoid the confusing words. Don't confuse the readers. Okay, the audience is there. They want to listen to you. They want to hear what you speak. They are not interested in what language or what words are you using. The more simple words you use, the more less complicated words you use, the better impact it will have on the people. Avoid redundant things. You don't need to frequently repeat the different words. Then of course, as we have talked about, making use of present tense and active voice. Try to make use of this. Of course, the time element is very important. If some event has taken place in a past tense or something has happened a long time back, of course you need to use past tense. But as far as possible, try to present the news stories in the present tense. So these are some of the basic principles, the basic steps that you need to keep in mind while writing for radio, or while trying to understand what language and style one should use for writing for radio copy. Okay, then let's come to television. So dear learners, as we have all talked about so far about the use of language and style for writing for print media, then for radio and for television as well. Okay, in television, the another advantage is there is an audio visual medium. The visuals are there. Okay, and TV news must be written in a very simple, direct manner, so a newscaster can read the copy easily and communicate effectively in a way that will actually help the listeners and the viewers understand the different complex issues and events the first time they hear it. Just like radio news, for television news stories also, you have to write in a very simple and short sentences. You need to write the TV news while remembering that what is said is complemented and supplemented with visuals. And the script should allow the visuals to breathe for themselves, because a visual speaks much more than 100 words. So whatever, it's obvious that from the visual need, it should not be repeated in the audio. Then of course we need to use a conversational style of writing. And another important aspect that one needs to keep in mind while looking at the language and style for television news is that there should be appropriate pace and rhythm, and give occasional respite in the middle. The complete story should be developed logically. The sentences, of course, should be very brief and should contain only one idea. And of course, as we already said, the font size, it should be very large enough. It should be very simple, and the language also should be very simple, also clear, and it also should be that people should be able to understand. Because so far we have tried to understand, we have tried to have a brief idea, we have tried to make the most of how we can make use of language and how we can make use of English language, more specifically English language for media, and the importance of using English language for media with particular focus on print, radio and television. And we have also learned the basic points that we need to keep in mind while going about or writing for print, radio, television media. And I'm sure that you all must have learned about the different skills of using English if you happen to be in the media profession or you are planning to join that profession. And so with this I come to the end of our module, and in the next module we shall meet again in another very interesting module that is on English for journalists. So see you again in the next module. Thank you.